Hey, hello, and welcome back to the Baron Earl Show. This week we have a special guest, a friend of mine for once, since everybody else is a friend of Mike's. Um, but I haven't been around as long and done as much. Um, but yeah, Ben and I have known each other for a while. We both kind of started around the same time professionally in with Alias Enterprises or Alias Comics. We both had some comics come out around then. We both know Mike Miller. He was we both have done work with him, who at that time was also the art director, I think, and one of the main editors, whatever, at Alias. Um, but anyways, Ben, how did you? And Ben has done a lot of stuff. Anybody that is familiar with geeky podcasts and Christian ones or whatever, he's done quite a few of different ones. He did a Welcome to Level 7 podcast that was very popular for Agents of Shield, and he's done some other. He's gonna burn the house down.
My dog is farting.
Oh, nice. Our dog's been doing that lately. It's very it's not fun, but it's rather
Fun for the
appropriate
dog.
for Ben. But anyways, we'll get into that more later. It will be interesting to see how he got into all those things and went to all those things. So, Ben, how young were you think, when you started really getting into kind of sci-fi and fantasy and kind of geeky stuff in general?
Like 3 or 4. No, I mean, I was just talking with some people yesterday about how, I have memories. I have more of a memory of seeing the commercial come on the TV for Superman the movie, and my dad
Right.
saying, "You want to see that?" I don't remember actually being in the theater with my dad and the people, the group that he was with, but yeah, I remember sitting in the living room seeing that commercial. My dad saying, "You want to go?" And of course, Super Friends and Star Wars and all that stuff. I mean, it's just been a part of my life ever since I've been aware of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And you were you doing some homemade comics and stuff in high school or something, or?
Oh, I was, yeah. So, I mean, grade 2, grade 3, I started writing stories and just, and most of that was fan fiction kind of stuff. It was Star Wars. It was, Superman and that kind of thing. I did draw a lot of my own comics in junior high, and made up some of my own characters, and then also did fanfic again, kind of stuff with
Right.
Star Trek comics. And I do remember they were all pretty terrible, but I do remember there was one panel that I drew of Captain Kirk that I was so proud of, because it looked like a perfect Ted Danson. So it was, and then I also drew an Enterprise once that looked really, really good. So yeah, but that was something that was always a part of my life. Was just, I love story, and I love telling stories, reading stories, watching stories. Yeah, and I remember taking my Birdman comics. So Birdman was like Voltron, only birds.
Right.
But took my Birdman comics and turned it into audio stories on my dad's stereo that had a little condenser mic on it. And so I just be talking into the mic and doing special effects into it and stuff like that. And again, horrible stuff, but that didn't matter. It was fun. I loved it. And all of those things, when you're doing them, they just feed into your own, your creative experiences. And so, as awful as it was, it definitely served a pretty important purpose.
Yeah, and then so how old? And forgive me if I'm skipping past something that's really important. But how old were you when you started seriously looking at and saying, I'd really like to do writing. I'm gonna try to get some schooling for it or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that was, again, probably just always.
Yeah.
I remember in junior high, that was my goal, was I'm gonna have my college picked out, and I was gonna learn how to be a writer and an artist and all that kind of thing. And it just kind of always stuck with me. And I always knew that no matter what I was doing, I would be some form of storyteller, even if I was working a job that had nothing to do with that.
Right.
It was either going to be a part of the job because I brought that to the job, or it was going to be something that I'm doing on the side. And it's ended up both and.
Right.
I've brought it to jobs where you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, storyteller, but then I've also worked as a janitor, and
Right.
that was the regular income, and then there was the writing stuff on the side where it's like that's what allows me to support my whole family
Right.
instead of just half my family with the janitor stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. So didn't you go to school or take some
yeah,
kind of
yeah. So I graduated with a degree in drama, journalism, and English,
What
and
school?
Bethel University. Well, it's Bethel University now. It was Bethel College here in Indiana. In the midst of that, I also went to the Christian College Coalition's film school, and then also went to a program called Act One Writing for Hollywood. And that Act One program that I went to, I think it was 2000. Yeah, it would have been It would have been 2000, just before I started having kids, actually. Um, the stuff that I learned in that was probably the most significant as far as any kind of post high school education that I had that actually pushed my writing to be better. And after that, directly after that, was when because I'd been in contact with Mike Miller before that, but right after that was when Mike Miller contacted me and said, "Hey, I got this book. It's called The Hedge Knight. Have you heard of it?" And I'm like, "No." He said, "Well, read it and then send me a 6-page sample from the first scene because I need a writer." And I've been talking to George Martin, and he's open to me having some of my friends send in some samples, and he's going to take a look at them. He's going to choose from them. And it was directly after that Act One Writing for Hollywood program I went to. I think that really fed into the way that I adapted the novella and got the job. That's what launched me into actually having a career
right.
in writing, as opposed to just I'm doing the writing, I'm having fun doing it, and it's a fun thing to do with these friends that I've made online who are artists, where I actually turned into a career.
Right. So was it a fun mix of this is really cool because I'm getting to do something like with like George Martin or whatever, mixed with, oh my gosh, I'm doing the pressure of doing something for a bigger name.
Yeah, I think even as I was doing that book, I realized this is probably the biggest thing I'm ever going to do. Like I that's just shows the
Right.
standard I had set for myself. But
Right.
I was like, I just stepped into something that and it was pretty big. It's the only thing I still get royalty checks on is that. And I just got one today. It's although the royalty checks, it reminds me of the episode of Seinfeld where he's getting paid for the jokes he did in Japan. And so he
Yeah.
gets like a stack of checks for 5 cents each.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like that, but it's been almost 20 years or so. No, not quite that long.
Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah.
It's been
yeah, almost 20 years or around in there since the book actually came out. But yeah, it was, and I look at it now, especially the first one, because I've done the 3 Hedge Knight books
right.
that they've done, and the first one I look at and I'm just like, so many words on this page. Why didn't
Right.
the editor say something or do something here? And there's especially the last issue, the last or almost last scene. I'm like, I could see why it was that way. I had so much more that I still needed to squeeze in.
Right.
But huge mistake there. Just like, oh, I should have spread this out a little bit more. I should have saved some time, saved some, not done the double page splash page that Mike hated me about, that kind of thing that would have given me a little bit more space because it was important to me. Now, they weren't my words that were important. They were George's, but there was a lot of words on a couple of those pages.
Yeah. And it's tough. It's tough to cut stuff out from like another author or whatever.
It is. I mean, there's a reason you make fun of me for having so many words, though.
Yeah. I mean,
because it's true. It's not. You're not wrong.
But sometimes it's I don't know. I mean, sometimes it works. I mean, well, because at least you can always trim. At least you can always trim back, and you can always. And there's a lot of times. I guess a little bit whatever inside baseball or whatever. But there's a lot of times when in some of the podcasts and different things that Ben and I've done, or stuff that he's written, or where we've co-written a script or something like that, or even like just whatever, and then we'll be going over it, and then he'll start editing the heck out of himself and yeah, we don't need to say that, we don't need to say this. So
No,
it's
we were doing a recording session with the actors, and I'm like, why
yeah,
don't you cut that line? Don't say that part. And but that's the school of thought I come from. Is
right,
do it big, and then trim it out, and trim it down. And there's been some times when I've worked with editors who they've specifically said, yeah, give me the big thing, and then we'll cut it down and it'll be okay. And then there's other times where I'll work with editors. I'm just like, why aren't you cutting me? Because
yeah,
there's stuff in there that needs to be trimmed out that I wish I had trimmed out before if I had known you weren't going to cut so deep. So
right, yeah. It's like I know, which I hate the term, but a lot of screenwriters call it like their first draft, they'll call it like a vomit pass, where you just
yeah,
throwing everything out and just seeing what sticks and and seeing if it pushes it slightly a different way or something creative comes out. But just to get it done, and I mean that's a big thing for a lot of writers, and I know especially Ben and I. But just feeling like you're getting things done, and that's one reason why a lot of screenwriters and people will do that, is they'll just like throw as much out as quickly as possible just to really get it rolling and to get yourself going.
I started working on something recently, and the person who's my point person for it, he said, yeah, hey, they want to make sure that you keep it a little bit shorter than the ones you gave us a couple years ago. And I was like, that's because what I gave you was a first draft. Like
Right. Yeah.
I thought we were gonna do some editing here, and he's like, no, and they didn't. Fortunately,
Right.
it's not like I was looking. I was like, it's bad because of you didn't.
Right.
But they were looking at it. It worked. It did the job, but it was longer than they were looking for. But they went ahead and kept it, and I
Are those
appreciate
books
that
still
too.
in print, Ben?
What?
Are
Yeah.
those books still in print?
The
The
Hedge
George
Knight
Martin
books?
ones are.
Yeah, they are.
Absolutely.
They are. They're being actually published by Jet City, which is through Amazon.
You think
And
I could find them at Barnes and Noble?
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe they'd be under. Well, I can't remember if it'd be under Hedge Knight or if it'd be under Martin, but
Yeah. Well, and
it's
they
the
have
Hedge Knight and the Hedge Knight, the Sworn Sword, and the
isn't it
Mystery
Mystery
Knight.
Night or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Mystery Knight.
They yeah, and Mike, when you look it up, you'll see, yeah, it's been around for a while, and they have a lot of different covers and a lot of different versions. They did recently, especially when Game of Thrones hit big, they went back and like rebranded and did all this stuff to kind of really match up the graphic novels with the novels and stuff. And I will tell you, like I have talked to actually this past week, I was talking to some whatever people who really do stuff in Hollywood and other things, but they really love reading fantasy and stuff. And they knew, and I think I mentioned something about it because I think I was trying to get them to check out our Supersonic podcast, and I mentioned something about you doing that. I said, but it's not it was on the some of the extra stuff from and they're like, oh yeah, you mean, and they knew they mean the Hedge Knight stuff with Doug. And I was like, oh yeah, exactly. I was like, he did those, which is, I mean, that's got to be awesome for George too, just because a lot of times those extra novellas or other short stories don't get much attention, or don't many people don't get to see them as they do like the regular stuff. So I mean, it is kind of cool to get it out there and have more people see it.
Yeah, the
A couple of months
novellas.
ago, Mike S. Miller contacted me and said, I got something if you want to write it.
Uh-oh.
I've always wanted to work with Mike, but I don't think he does continuity anymore.
Not too much.
No, he's dealing in NFTs these days and cryptocurrency.
And doing well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's a lot of people that I know. Well, I know Ben is too. Have you guys seen that you can do the on Twitter that they have the NFT what is it? It's like your picture or whatever. Like you can do some sort of thing that turns it into like an NFT or something.
So I'm sure the people are lined up waiting to buy that.
I know. I know. It's yeah. I don't even know exactly how it works, but I saw because I got a new phone, so I'm having to sign up again and check and get into all my profiles and stuff like that. And yeah, and it came up as a thing. It's like, do you want to make your profile picture an NFT or whatever? I'm like, what? I was like, not right now, thank you.
So
But
Ben, Lullaby and the Imaginaries are your own creation, right?
well, they're Mike's.
No. So the Imaginaries I worked on with Mike. He came to with the initial idea, and then allowed me to take off a little bit and add to it some. But it was definitely his original idea, and there was a lot of back and forth with some of the for what went from there.
These were published by Image.
Yeah. And then Lullaby was something that Mike had met someone. I'm not sure exactly what their original connection was with Mike and Hector, but he had this Lullaby idea, and this is one where Mike was like, "Yeah, I'd like you to have a writer help you with this." And so his art and his imagination, Hector's, were just amazing, just so beautiful and so cool, and so it's so exciting to be able to be a part of that and kind of guide and take his initial ideas again. And that's really where a lot of my career has been, is other people's ideas, and kind of, with George Martin forming the visual script from his story, or with Imaginaries or Lullaby working with them on their original idea. For the Imaginaries, it really was Mike didn't have time to do all the things that he had going on, because he just had a lot, especially at that time. He had a lot of stuff happening.
Do you remember what year those came out?
Oh, I don't. That would have been
close to 2006,
around in there. Yeah.
Somewhere around there originally. But yeah, a lot of those they've been reprinted and everything too, because they were originally at Alias and then Image, and then I think they've had some other places do that. Well, and I know that Mike had even gotten them into other countries and stuff too. I know there's the Spanish version, and I know that there's some other stuff too, because I was even talking to him about that, because I had a lot of people. I had a bunch of foreign people who were doing a bunch of who were looking for content from the US, and I had reached out to Mike about it to see if he'd be interested. And he's like, oh, it's like, well, we were already in like all these different countries we were talking about. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But Mike, and so we'll have to ask this. I will say, Ben and I have talked, since we've known each other for so long, we've talked a lot about story and a lot about intellectual properties and different ones that we love, whether it's Stargate or Robotech or a bunch of different things. And like how we would do things better and differently, at least differently. Whether they're better or not is probably up to our opinion. So I know Mike has done this. Mike's had to he's had to work from other people's things. I mean, like, I still love his Heir to the Empire and stuff that he did with Timothy Zahn's stuff. But I want to ask, and I keep wanting to do like a Robotech podcast, and I keep wanting to save it for this. And then Mike knows, because I had talked to him before about it. But this is for Mike, and I'm asking this because Ben is a Robotech fan too. I don't know how many of the comics he collected, but
just a handful.
Yeah, but I'm interested because I know the only original story, well, at least one of the mainly, I know there were some extra little things they added, but I know the only original story was like the Robotech graphic novel that you were involved with Carl. Like, how much of like Carl's, I'm wondering how much leeway or whatever you had with the story and how it.
I had complete freedom.
Oh,
I had no guidelines except for the Robotech stories that I had watched,
right,
and with which I was familiar. So that I made that one up out of the whole cloth. I'd have to reread it to remember what I wrote. I mean, that was
well, I know the big thing, and it's funny because it's like it they kind of latched onto it for the Sentinels that they wanted to do. But I know one of the big things was and we don't have to geek out and talk about this a lot, but one of the big things for anybody who does know is like in that you really brought if I remember correctly, I think you really brought Zor into it, and he was from like the middle series, and then you kind of really connected it and kind of wove it with the first series, Macross, and kind of really I thought it was great that because you really brought like the three different series and stuff kind of together, even though it connected more of the first and second, which for that time when you were working on and Ben, I don't even know if you know this, but Mike wrote the whole Masters series. And actually,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Mike wrote the whole Robotech Masters series. So I mean, the great thing about that, especially if you checked out some different ones, is a lot of the other ones were like they kind of bounce back and forth between the writers and artists. But Neil Vokes was the artist, and I'm pretty sure he did every issue. There might have been one he didn't.
I think you're right.
I
You know,
am.
I have a couple of reprints in the basement that they just sent me, which were
Yeah.
fairly recent. I haven't even looked through them. I'll look through them, and you know, I'll send you one if you want it.
Yeah, definitely. Because that was, and I said that to Mike, and I honestly had told a lot of people that, and it's also that was actually for me with other projects and things that I've worked on. And I know Ben and I've said this about other things, whether it's TV or movie or comics or whatever. But like having that consistency and that consistent voice or the consistent look, you know, or whatever, like the consistent like directing style or whatever it is, like it really helps connect better with the viewers or listeners or whatever. And that was one of the things, like I absolutely, even though like I loved all three generations of Robotech, and like Masters was my least favorite, but like I still loved it. I mean to me it was still like, you know, it was just A- rather than A+. But then it comic wise, it was like I mean that was like a solid A for me, like the whole series, because you had consistent writing and story flow style with Mike doing the writing and with Neil Vokes doing the art on every single issue. It gave it that consistency, which is so great, in that I know we, especially Ben and I, grew up with. And Mike did too. I mean, in the 70s and 80s, a lot of writers and artists stayed with series for a long time, and that's what the comic, consumers were used to, because you want, and like it, even if they switched to a really good writer or a really bad artist, it kind of like threw you for a loop when they did it. So that was so yeah, and definitely, and anybody who is, or people that are Robotech fans, or even like Macross fans, definitely check out the Robotech Masters, and they do have the reprints of the whole big volumes, and they're like there's several hundred pages, and I think you can find them on different places for anywhere from like $20 to $25, but they're totally worth it. They're very, very big. And they have a lot of stuff. Sometimes they even have some neat extra stuff. Like I didn't know until I can't remember which one it was. Oh, I think it was in the Macross one, that Carl Masek's wife wrote the intro to that, and it was really cool hearing the behind the scenes stuff, because she illustrated the first Macross graphic novel before it became Robotech. Yeah, she illustrated it all, and like I still love it. Like that was great, and it was before it became Robotech, and she didn't do any other. She never drew any other Robotech stuff again. Like that. I mean, but she did a whole issue of Macross, and it looks great, and it has like a little bit of a painted look to it, and kind of like Les's stuff on Nexus and some other things he's done. But anyways, I was interested, and I know you wouldn't remember all the details from that, but yeah, it's tricky, and that's one of the reasons why I know and I'm sure Mike not as much as Ben and I, because Ben and I been hired to adapt other people's stuff quite a bit, or adapt stories that have already been out there, or things that have been out there. So, I mean, that was one of the reasons why. I mean, because we have been talking for years about these different like superhero characters and
Yeah.
sci-fi things and all this other stuff, and that's when and when he's really doing a lot of podcasting stuff, and then I was starting to do more, and I had always really liked like audiobooks and things like this. And this was when Mike's eyes are going to glaze over, because he's more into music for audio stuff. He's a big music guy, but that I mean, and with some of Ben's podcast things that he had done, he used some of my music for some of the different things, which was cool, because I had done a bunch of instrumentals and stuff, and he was like, "Hey, can I use this one for this and that one for that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." It's like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get it out there.
Couldn't
let
beat the
people-
price, man. It was
Yeah, like, so I mean, so we really started working, and that was one of the reasons why we really wanted to do like our supersonic thing, because it's like, because we kept getting, and especially, I mean, we kept getting pigeonholed, I guess, I don't know, but either into doing fantasy a lot, mostly, or into doing even with like biblical stuff, which is, again, set thousands and thousands of years ago. And Ben and I both like sci-fi and stuff too, so it was kind of driving us a little I don't know, it's driving us crazy, but it's hard to break that stigma. And I'm sure that there's certain things that people think about Mike and stuff, and that he's had trouble breaking. I know there's people who think Mike is a far right Nazi, which he is not. And he will bash people on the right for doing the wrong things just as easily as he bashes the other. Probably bashes people on the right more, who he tends to agree with more, if they would actually do what they say.
As you know, Jeff, that I have 3 rules about writing, and the first rule is it's my job to entertain, and I never lose sight of that fact. And I don't invest my fiction with politics, with a few exceptions. And Nexus is one of those exceptions. Any longtime reader of Nexus will guess that we're both conservative,
right?
But we're not rabid or nasty about it. We try to be entertaining. So there's a great deal of satire in it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that you poke fun at, and different things too, and it's and I kind of hate that, like, when people have said things, it's like it's like, you don't even know Mike. It's just the same old sound bites. It's like, Mike is, I mean, the only thing you can point to is like Nexus, and like the other 500 things Mike has written. Like, he doesn't barely get political at all. I mean, he gets more into the comedy side and the overall structure and the overall story. And
Ben, I wanted to ask you, what do you think your reception would be if you reached out to Image today and asked to do a book for them?
I think they'd say it'd be like the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy, where he's like, "I'm Star-Lord." Who? I really think, and actually, I would never call myself Star-Lord, but I don't even know if they would even recognize that I had.
I was gonna say, so many people have changed there too. I think about Eric Larson's about the only person who's like still there that was there, but
and I almost feel a little bad sometimes.
Jim
Valentino
publishes through them, and I don't think any of the others. Well, Jim Lee obviously doesn't.
Right. Yeah, Rob Liefeld doesn't, and a bunch of I know a bunch. Well, I take that back. Actually, Cyberforce, the people with that, I know they're trying to reboot that again, and they've been looking. They're doing some kind of thing where they're looking for new writers and new artists, but you can't have had anything published before. So,
really,
that's because they're trying to be new and modern and everything, which it's kind of comes back to the whole thing of nowadays too, where they look at your social media and see how many followers and stuff you have, if they're gonna be hiring you to write something entertaining or whatever, because they want to have that sure audience bet. But
I almost feel bad when I'm talking to someone new about my comics, where oh, you've been published by Zondervan and Marvel and Image, and it's just like,
Right.
yeah, but that was a really long time ago, and I have no relationship with them right now. Like, it's not, it's not that big of a deal at this point because it was a long time ago, and was, and so that's part of the supersonic stuff,
Right.
is because there's no, I don't want to call it a gatekeeper, but why not call it a gatekeeper? There's no
Yeah.
one to say no to us. I would love to do comics again and do more comics, but I just don't have the funds to do it on an indie scale. And right now I don't have the time to invest into like a Kickstarter kind of thing.
Right.
And so it is kind of just following, where can I do things like Supersonic, which is audio, and still tell some of the stories I want to tell, or do some of the stories like with some of the Bible stuff that I've been doing, where every once in a while they'll come back to me and say, hey, we need another project from you. Can you give us a 16-page story about the origin of Easter, or whatever it might be. And
that's Kingstone.
Yeah, it's
usually,
Kingstone.
right?
Yeah.
Do you know that the Action Bible is the best-selling graphic novel of all time?
Yeah. Yep. And it's good too. It's good.
Well, the art is brilliant. But when I got my copy and I started reading through it, I was shocked and disappointed to find out that they did not print the verses from the Bible,
right,
but instead paraphrased everything in layman's language.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought that was a big opportunity missed, because I'm always looking for good quotes.
So if you're looking for that, there's a book out there called the Word for Word Bible, and it's a comic book Bible.
Yeah.
Definitely check them out. All the Bible work.
He's a history buff too.
Yeah.
Like, he really gets into the history. So like the armor and all that stuff is like history accurate. Like it's super cool.
Yeah. The Bible stuff I did is adaptation, and is not like, here's the verses, here's the image. It comes close with the works that I did that were the Gospels, where I put all 4 Gospels in order,
right,
as one narrative instead of as 4. And there's a lot more of that kind of thing, especially when I'm having Jesus talk. I didn't want to put too many words into Jesus's mouth, because
right, yeah,
I'm not Jesus, and I just wanted to be really careful with that. So,
well, it's okay to update his slang a little bit.
Yeah.
What, my homies?
Well, yeah, and it's one, and it is good, like, because like Ben's a Christian, so at least he has some sort of idea and some sort of context of what he believes. Like, if Jesus was talking today, this is the way that he would speak. So that helps. And so I did want to get into a little bit. So Ben is he has been involved in youth ministry and ministry in general for a long time. As he said, that kind of plays into some of the story stuff he's done, which has definitely come in handy with especially when he was doing like kid stuff. And he is very he's pretty adept at doing puppets and stuff too, and doing that kind of a thing, and all that stuff is storytelling.
Yeah, and that side of storytelling for me comes from my parents. They did a lot of those things. They traveled and would do camps and things like that with their puppets. I have their puppets now. I don't use them too often because they are as old or older than me, some of them. So
Ben, are you Whispering Loon on Whisper?
Yes, he is.
I am.
He is Whispering Loon.
I'm following you now.
Yeah, I'm Whispering Loon. That comes from the band that I was in college. We were the Whispering Loons. And
good name.
The two guys who started it were both Canadian. I'm not Canadian, but I'm Canadian adjacent because I lived there for a while, but I wasn't born there. And so they came on my radio show and did a song or two, and then I was like, hey, I got songs that I was writing in high school. Let's put them to music. And so then it turned into a whole thing where we had songs that they had done that we did all together. There's songs that we pulled from other people. And, but one of our mottos was, we may not be good, but we're loud, because we were talented enough, and then we brought in a guitarist who was just amazing. He couldn't read music. He learned to play guitar in Romania. He was not exchange student, but he came from Romania to college with us, and just honestly the best guitarist I've ever seen personally. Like I've heard better guitarists, but at that point he was the best I'd ever sat in the room with, and he elevated us quite a bit. So our songs are funny. Yeah, there's no way to hear it right now. Sorry.
Didn't you make any record? Didn't you record?
We did. We have some VHS tapes that I've thought about trying to upload to YouTube, but that's all we have right now.
But you have, don't you have? Didn't you say you have a song or two on Spotify? Don't you?
I do, but they're the songs that I have on Spotify. One is from a puppet show that I did with a company a company that did this puppet series, and the main character that I voiced didn't do any singing, but I did get to do this sheriff character who needed a nice baritone voice to sing his song. And then my other song that I have on Spotify, I didn't sing it. It's Grave Robber, and it's called Mummitor and the Conquerors of the Cosmos. And that comes from my buddy Tim Barron, who is an amazing artist. He's also not doing comics anymore. He's doing skateboard art these days, and it's beautiful stuff. Look him up.
I think we're Facebook friends.
You and Tim Barron. I
probably.
I'd hesitate to ask if you're related, but you
know, we are. Tim Barron, Indiana,
same last name.
Purdue University.
Yeah, that's my friend. Yeah, and he created a book where he wrote or drew the whole thing. Oops, keep hitting my mic because I talk with my hands.
Yeah.
He drew the whole thing and said, "Hey, Ben, my friend told me that you write comics and that he went to college with you." And so, yeah, I do. And he's like, "Would you help me out?" And so I got to write the script from this just bonkers, crazy, awesome comic graphic novel, Julius Destructus. And then and then he did 2 books that were kind of Masters of the Universe style of thing, called Mummitor and the Conquerors of the Cosmos, and then we did a Frankenstein one as well. But we got Grave Robber. I wrote some lyrics, and then Grave Robber took the lyrics and recorded a song of what the theme song to this unmade animated series would have been, and it's great. But it's just called Mummitor. And it's I love it so much. It's real kind of surreal. It's like,
do you see Tim these days? Do you see him in person?
No, not in person. He lives in Fort Wayne, which is about 90 minutes away from me. But we're in contact on Facebook and texting. So,
and Ben has 42 children. So
I have 7. No, 5. There's 7 of us in the family. 5 children. I was
gonna say, holy cow!
No, I did not get 2 extra children in the last couple months.
Yeah. No, and honestly, I mean that's why. It's funny because I know Ben is humble, and he feels like that he hasn't done that much or hasn't. I know as a creator, like you always want to do more. You're always having the new stuff and everything. But that's when that's when I stumbled across today when I was the Ben Avery's podcast credits, 1,129 episodes, totaling 1,188 hours.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about that, but so I do have a number of podcasts though, and so there's there's Strangers and Aliens. We have 300 and some. That's been going for 10 years,
right?
And the Comic Book Time Machine is creeping up on 200 episodes, and then Welcome to Level 7, which we started when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was announced, and we're just continuing to do all the Marvel movies, the Marvel episodes of the shows, and we've fallen back on some. We haven't done all of the Netflix stuff. We just couldn't get to it in time, and there was just so much more stuff coming. But yeah, that's up into the 300 episodes as well. I mean, so I'll say this, as much as I try not to, but still allow myself to depreciate or whatever,
right?
Self-defecate,
whatever.
But as much as I do that, I do recognize, even though I said like I started out the gate with probably what was going to be my biggest project that I ever worked on,
right?
It might not be the biggest one. The Kingstone Bible might be the biggest one, because that one has gone to, multiple countries, dozens of languages.
Do you have copies of that?
Of the Kingstone Bible? I do. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't do the whole thing, but I did like the Book of Job, and I worked on the Gospels and
you did
Esther.
Like
did you use the language from the Bible?
No, that's where I did like the adaptation, and especially like the Book of Job. What was important to me about the Book of Job was that it would translate the intent, and so I loved being able to do the visual. It's like I taught English in high school, and whenever we do Shakespeare, yeah, we can read it, but it's meant to be seen and heard. And with the Book of Job, you have like, it's a conversation, it's a dialogue, it goes back and forth, and you have his friends. And so I'm just like, this is great, because I'd love to put a visual to it so you can see, here's this one friend who, whenever he talks, he's talking about this. And here's this other friend who, whenever he talks about this. And here's this other friend in the background who's not talking right now because he's holding his tongue. And so that one, it was really important to me to make sure that it was understandable and easy to follow. And I loved it because I did it. It was a 24-page book, I think it was. And in my mind, it was like, man, I just wish I had another 24 pages where I could just really expand this out. And it was not a week or two later when Art from Kingstone contacted me and said, hey, would you mind turning it into a 48-page book for us? Nice. I was like, oh, yes. Yeah, I'd love to.
The art on that one looks really intense too.
Oh, that's Jeff Slemons, man. And that's what I was about to say is,
Jeff Slemons.
Yeah.
He lives nearby. And
no, I didn't.
He's one of the artists on Thin Blue Line, which is at the printer right now.
Right.
And we're all going to get together in a week or two to sign these postcards. I'll say hello to him for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the most talented artists that I've worked with.
Awesome.
And so as much as I look back and I'm like, well, I wish I could do this or that, I've worked with some amazing, amazing artists. I've been very blessed to have had contact with them or to be put in contact with them by a publisher.
Yeah, nice. That's Jeff's work.
That's Jeff's cover.
It's just beautiful. Like he did some ArmorQuest covers that we ended up not using for when they were going to be novellas, and just these beautiful paintings. I'm just like, man, he takes Jeff, Mike, Sherwin, Schwartzrock. These guys, they take what was in my imagination and I script it on the screen. I script it on my computer screen and then send it to him or them. And then what comes back is just like, you took my imagination and like went 5 steps further and 5 steps better than I even imagined it could be. So I've been very, very blessed. So.
Yeah, Mike's worked with some really good artists too that I'm sure have impressed him with what they've done with his words and his descriptions.
Well, the guy that penciled Thin Blue Line, Joe, is an old friend of mine. He's a full-time police officer, and he still finished the book faster than many pros. But Joe kind of sketched it in, and Jeff, who inked the book, fleshed everything out. I mean, he added the detail that's going to blow your mind.
Wow.
Yeah, and also his illustrations of cars. He's in every issue of Cartoons. Do you know about that, Jeff?
Yeah.
Cartoons. It's a magazine devoted, cartoon magazine, and his stuff towers over everybody else's work in there, because most of the other guys are just kind of low-level cartoonists, and Jeff is this consummate artist. And you go to his website and you look at his fine art, at his landscapes and stuff, and it just blows your mind.
My caricature on Facebook is by Jeff, and it's all about detail. Like he's just got so much detail, but not so much that you're overwhelmed by it. It's just like it just adds, and every stroke is just I could wax poetically about Jeff probably longer than
you're BEN AVERY storyteller, right?
Yeah, that's my Facebook page, but my personal Facebook image is the one by Jeff.
Oh, I can't friend you right now because I'm still in Facebook jail for my crime.
Yeah. And my dog, your dog is farting and my dog is barking. So,
but this does look like Jeff Slemons. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put this up.
Oh yeah, man, I haven't thought about cartoons in a long time. I saw that when I was a lot younger.
Yeah, I see it on Facebook whenever he posts like different things that he's done, and it's
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so Ben does have some interesting things coming out soon. I mean, obviously, well, for the people that know us, we're getting ready to kind of ramp up our supersonic podcast again, which is basically like, as Ben called it, comics for your ears. Which is, I guess we could also call it poor man's comics because they're free. and that was one of the concepts.
The art is by the best artist possible. Your imagination.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were but that was one of, at least it was one of my considerations. It's just the comics are getting so expensive to collect and stuff that you can never hardly get all the ones you'd like, including like on Kickstarter and things like that too. But and that's what we were like, it'd be cool to do our own universe and have stuff that's kind of to supplement the fact that we can't afford the other stuff, and kind of give them good adventures and things like that they can hear. But we are getting ready to ramp that back up, finish our huge first season, and move towards a big crossover thing that we're doing. That was kind of the plan from the beginning.
Yeah.
And But I did want to give Ben a little bit of a chance to talk about his other stuff that's coming up. We do have, and I helped kind of put this together. He has the ArmorQuest novel that we recently got done doing all the edits on. And we're going to be deciding with the publisher exactly how and when that's going to be released. Ben did find a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, I
that
found
he
a
had written.
ton of ArmorQuest scripts that I had forgotten about, and
Yeah,
like I had vague memories. And then I was looking it up. I was like, "Oh, this is a graphic novel that I wrote. This is 120 pages," and I don't know if anything's going to come of that, but it depends. If we do like a Kickstarter,
right.
I could see, even the script themselves could become some sort of a bonus or a stretch goal or
Oh
something.
yeah,
I don't know, but yeah, the primary thing I wanted to see with ArmorQuest, because that's one that's mine. Like that's
right.
personal to me. And Sherwin like brought it to life with just this amazing kind of Mike Mignola art style.
Right.
But that one it started here, and it was just like, I want to do this story. This is a story I want to tell. I named the main character Timothy, which is the name of my firstborn child. So I'd love to see that original graphic novel reprinted as we're looking at how are we printing this follow-up novel.
Right.
So
Yeah, and that's and they pretty much have it's kind of split into three parts. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with the third part yet, but that's all kind of planned out too. And like you said, there's all these other stories. It's basically, ArmorQuest is kind of like Star Wars meets Lord of the Rings, is what a lot of people say, and it is. As
there's glowing swords,
Yeah,
and there's
robots,
kind of, yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
not a ton of them.
It's not a steampunk. It's a
Right.
power punk, I guess. I don't know what I would call it, but there's there's mechanical stuff that they use as well, but it's mechanical stuff that a medieval society would create because they have this energy source.
Right.
That's kind of the made up fantasy portion of this
Protoculture.
energy source. Yeah. So,
but yeah, and it's and honestly, I mean, it came out to 16 years ago or something like that.
So that one,
But it's still honestly, it really still has been really beloved. Like, a lot of people really liked it because it was written and illustrated so well, and it's kind of, and I can vouch too. They have a very good world built around it, because I have the world book and everything, and who knows if we'll end up doing something with that too. But but because of all that, and because of putting all the hard work in, they have something that is really good. It's what you really want a lot of intellectual properties to be like, that they're really a full good big idea, and it can really kind of, you can tell a lot of stories in that world, and it is, I mean, it is all really good. And it is going to be coming out, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I did want to give you a chance though too to talk a little bit about your novel that you wrote, that you're wanting to get out there too.
What's the story about, Ben?
The novel that I wrote.
Tell Mike.
What?
Tell Mike
Oh,
what it's about.
It's called Ghosts of the Future, and it's about a crew on a ship who they're investigating just an interesting anomaly as they're just on their way from point A to point B. But then the interesting anomaly turns out to have some dark secrets. And it involves time, and there's some time bending going on, if not straight on time travel, and just dealing with all of that. But then there's, of course, there's the tension of the bad guys and that sort of thing. But
Is this a sailing vessel or outer space?
It's outer
Outer
space. Yeah,
space.
it's sci-fi. It's the ship is called the Tabitha, and it's their crew. I mean, they're just regular people on a spaceship just trying to make their living, and then they get drawn into this kind of wacky, crazy, it's not wacky like wacky races, but it's more like just unusual situation that none of them could have expected. And it came from actually from Tim Barron. Tim Barron drew a picture of an astronaut or of a spacesuit with a skull in it, and it's just like, oh, what's the story of that behind that? And that's what kind of got me thinking about it. And then I really wanted to write a novel. It was one of those moments where it's like, I want to do something for myself, and took my son to a concert by Andy Mineo, and he has a song. It's just all about his creative dry spell that he went through, and it's just this kind of rallying cry of "You can't stop me," and just it really inspired me to like do this. And then a year later, I happened to take my son to another concert by Andy Mineo, and I'm standing in the back watching one of the early acts, and I actually started working on my novel a little bit there too, because I was working on it every day for November NaNoWriMo. And so I actually at his concert wrote some of the novel there. But
how did you write? Did you write by hand in a pen, in a tablet?
This was on my phone through Google Drive. Which was the best way for me to be able to track that across devices, so I could do it on my laptop.
With voice technology, did you speak into the phone?
I just stood there in the corner, just doing my little thumbs on my. It was not the best environment, but I did write, like half a chapter at this concert. So yeah, but yeah, it was just like, I want to write a story that's just for me, and that it's not because someone asked me to do it. It's not because someone said, "Hey, we need this. You're good at the Bible story thing. Can you do some more Bible stories?" I love doing that. Don't get me wrong, but this was like, it was also a dry spell for me where I wasn't getting many jobs as well. And so I'm like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do this. And so, yeah, the novel is done. I just don't know what I'm doing with it. I've never dealt with publishing a novel on my own, or I've never dealt with like trying to get an agent and getting a publisher to publish it. And so I've been kind of sitting on it now. And I've gone through and done the editing that I'm happy with. And the story is in a place where I'm happy with it. The ending is in a place where I'm happy with it. It's changed from the initial idea. The initial idea was that a guy finds the spacesuit with the skeleton in it, and he's like, well, apparently in the future I'm going to die, and then I'll end up in the past somehow to find myself. But as long as this is attached to my spacesuit, I'll never die, because I only found one spacesuit, not two. And so he's like, as long as I've got this thing here, time's on my side. And that kind of developed into more of a ensemble cast, and that whole bit kind of went away. But the idea, they find the spacesuit, and it is someone from their crew who's still alive. And so then the mystery is, okay, so how did it get here? How did this happen? And then even who is it? Because it's the skeleton. They have to, do some scans and stuff, figure out who it is. But there's the mystery of which one of us is this, and how did it happen? So
and honestly, I mean, this is the thing. Like, I'm so happy for Ben because there's not a lot of times when he's really happy with what he's written, or like
That
whatever.
afflicts
And the
every
fact,
writer,
Yeah.
as you
oh
know.
yeah, and just and just the fact that he's like, I'm done with it. He's like, I'm happy with the ending. I'm happy with the edits I've made. I mean, anybody that knows Ben knows that is like huge. To have, because he's definitely, and I mean most of us are. He's definitely like, that the art is always abandoned, like it's never finished, kind of mentality. But
I
he's
know.
really,
Yeah.
satisfied
But
and happy with
that's
it.
the artistic paradox, though, where
Right.
the artistic paradox is, where you look inside and you're like, it's not good enough. Is anything that I do good enough? But
Right.
then at the same time, you're like, but I'm putting it out there. I'm publishing it. People
Right.
are, it's out there for you to read. I don't know if it's good enough for anyone to read, but
I'm sure it is. See, that's the thing. I guess that's the reason why I'm kind of excited too, is that some of the best stories and shows or comics or whatever have been stuff that people have kind of done themselves. That and it just come from more of a personal place and stuff, and it really resonates. And it's not, and it's just like with like Mike, but like you too. I mean, once you have that kind of the storytelling structure and you understand a lot of those things, and then I don't know. I
we'll
would
see. We'll
have
see
more
what happens.
confidence than you do.
Ben,
Well,
if you're interested in writing short fantasy or science fiction, I know a bunch of anthologies that pay that are looking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested in seeing that for sure. Yeah, the whole thing with Ghosts of the Future is it's the whole kind of idea where C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were talking about, like, we need to write the novels we want to see. We
Right.
want to write the one, and so and that's where it was for me. So I want to write a book that I want to read, and
Yeah.
and I did. So if nothing else, I succeeded there, and
Yeah. And I know Mike's been constantly asking and kind of letting people know where to follow or stalk Ben on social media as we've done this, as
I've
he's been
already started stalking
him. But Ben, are there any other places you'd really like people to follow you?
Yeah, so there's Welcome to Level 7. That's the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast that I'm a part of. There's Comic Book Time Machine, that's kind of my more of the hobby podcast than any other podcast. I mean, they're all hobby podcasts, but that's the one where I'll read a comic and decide I want to record an episode about what I thought about this comic book. And if I have time, I do. And if I don't, I don't. And so there's long gaps of time in between. I have two other guys that there's longer gaps between their episodes. So I don't feel too bad.
But it's great because you have the 3 different voices and stuff.
And there's Strangers and Aliens, which is about faith and fantasy, Christianity, spirituality, and science fiction and that kind of thing. And that's the one that's been going on for 10 years now. So those are kind of the podcast realm. Of course, there's Supersonic Pod Comics, which we've been talking about, but there's a relaunch happening. And so we've been kind of priming the pump a little bit, and definitely please like it on Facebook. There's a page called Supersonic Pod Comics, and if you just look it up there, please like it on Facebook. You'll get,
as soon as I get out of slander,
you'll get notifications there. We also have an Instagram that we're doing, and we have a Twitter, but we don't use it very much. But and then the other thing I would just say is, like, for me myself, Ben Avery Storyteller is my Facebook presence, where I'll post random podcast episodes there and just updates about what I'm doing and that kind of thing. So my personal website, benavery.com, you can go to, but it's really out of date.
And I will say we have been talking with the publisher of ArmorQuest, and since we're getting ready to release the big novel, and I like 99% sure that the plans are to re-release the graphic novel too. The plan is also to update the website, and so it'll be the armorquest.com website, and that will be updated with all that stuff too.
Yeah, and there is ArmorQuest on Facebook that I've just started posting again too. I think I posted just a teaser about some stuff that's coming up, and yeah. But that's all the social media stuff. But Ben Avery Storyteller, you go there, you'll be able to find links to all these other places, and that's probably right now the best hub. But I'd really appreciate it if you'd like, especially Supersonic Pod Comics on Facebook, if you're listening right now.
As soon as I get out of the slam.
Out of Facebook jail.
Yeah, it's always fun. I mean,
how would you know?
Yeah. Well, I think I was in it for a little short, but that was, I don't know. I think they interpreted a word wrong or something.
That's what happened to me. A friend said he'd been advised to light candles to get rid of the ghosts in his house. And I wrote, you have to burn the whole house down.
Oh,
Bam!
yeah.
Within 30 seconds, I'd been banned for 30 days.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things. I actually didn't get banned from that, but I got banned from, I actually still had access to everything, but I couldn't, I think it automatically kicked me out of a bunch of groups and stuff and everything. And when I was talking about a friend and I was just teasing him and I said something and I was saying something about setting him on fire or something, and it happened. Yeah. It's a real, I guess apparently setting houses or people on fire is really a serious problem. They have
but if you say something, they don't like, they slap the lacks context label on you.
Yeah.
Lacks context.
Yeah. Yep. It's fun. Ben is more careful with his words, though.
I am very careful with my words, but I have different people that I represent that, I have to be careful, you know, like my day job is a children's pastor. And so one way or another, I'm just very, very careful because, and also just in general, that's just my personality is I'm just a very, generally speaking, sometimes I'll put the foot in the mouth, but on social media, I'm just very careful and try to be very even keel and not get into fights and not get into, although it does happen, but not often.
So. Yeah. I'm probably more of the edgy jokester, and Ben's like, Jeff, don't, I wouldn't. I'm like, okay, you're no fun. But it's it's always interesting. But yeah, definitely check out all the stuff he's got doing. If you want to see or hear or read the novel, bug Ben, tell him, because it's I mean, I'm telling you, like I've got a good feeling about it just from the fact of that you're so happy with the story, and that just happens so rarely.
I'm just at this point though, I'm just stuck in the I don't know what to do, and my personality type is like to research and find out, and I'm just I don't know where to look, but because when I was younger, I used to have the subscription to Writer's Digest and get the writer's manual every year and everything, and now it's just I don't even know where to look anymore.
Oh yeah, everything keeps changing. I'm sure Mike will hook you up, but
happy to.
Yeah. We do have some other great guests coming up. Not that Ben wasn't great, because I think he is. And he has a lot of great stuff. I really wanted to get into some of the other stuff that he's done too. I know for years he's done stuff with Joni Eareckson Tada and disabled kids and things, and helped with their big camps and things for that. And but honestly, I mean, that's just for me, that's just all the more reason to support somebody, people like Ben. And same with other creators too. I mean, man, especially like when you find, it means a lot, especially to people like Ben who are doing these other things and helping kids and doing other things, who don't have a ton of time to do creative stuff too. And so when you support their stuff, it really means a lot, and is very encouraging. And he loves it when it's, when it touches your life and stuff. And so I guess that's it. I will let you go. Any last words or no. Okay. I will let Ben is famous for saying, aside from introducing himself with two Bens,
Okay, so that, I don't know where that came from, but early on, Strangers and Aliens, it started. I don't know how. I was listening to some early episodes. Yeah,
Ben Avery.
Ben Avery.
So some people actually call him Ben.
Yeah, but that's just me saying I'm Ben. So you can call me Ben.
Yeah.
But then I'm just making sure you know which Ben I am. I'm Ben.
So,
Ben Avery.
What do you say at the end of your shows?
I just want to wish you. I want to say thank you so much for listening, and I want to wish you Godspeed.